Alright, people, midweek report time. A lot of stuff has come out over the last couple of days. Lots of news breaking, fights being announced, cards being announced, fights being announced for undercards. In terms of, we obviously got to talk about Dubois versus Usyk as well, because we're days away. We're on the cusp of that fight now, and of course, just to remind everyone, live watch along this Saturday. I'm seeing reports that the ring time for both fighters, the fight time, will be around 10 p.m. British time. So that's around about 11 o'clock Polish time, because they're about an hour ahead. So it looks as if it's going to be similar-ish to a normal fight night. Obviously, the undercard dependent, it could end earlier. So we'll probably, we'll probably look to go live. I want to do about 8:30, round about then, 8:30, 9 o'clock or so. Because the last one when we done Joshua versus Hellenius, that went nearly 3 hours. And that was not easy. If this goes well, the watch along, we probably do an aftermath episode not long after, just to kind of get everyone's kind of thoughts post fight, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. In terms of, we'll just talk briefly here. So obviously I've had issues this week with the Wi-Fi, so I haven't even had a chance to properly, I haven't had a chance to really look at videos, because the data, when the Wi-Fi here goes, the data tends to stay but not be so good, so to even get videos up was just a job. So Alexander Usyk, Daniel Dubois. What I will say about this fight, it's going to be interesting to see what the weights are tomorrow. Alexander Usyk tends to weigh normally in around the 220s. Dubois, he's weighed in the high 230s earlier on in his career, but lately he's been in around the 240s, which is a good weight for him. So it's going to be, excuse me, can't right there. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of weights they come in at. Again, look, I've already given my pick on this. I think Alexander Usyk is going to stop Daniel Dubois. But I'm expecting early on in this fight a very competitive fight. I'm expecting a lot of people to be saying, well, gee, I think Alexander Usyk is over the hill after this fight, because, he fought Daniel Dubois, and Dubois hasn't looked good in a couple of fights, and, well, he lost rounds and this, that, because people can be very reactionary like that. I'm expecting early on a pretty competitive fight, but Usyk, too, as he normally does, pull ahead down the stretch. Right? That's what I'm expecting. Whether that happens or not remains to be seen. We'll only find out on fight night. That is what I'm expecting, and as I said, it's going to be interesting to see how Dubois handles being the away fighter, because he's going into very, very hostile territory. Very hostile territory. This is Usyk's a sort of homecoming, and he is going to be the absolute homecoming hero. That's just the way he is going to be perceived. So it's going to be interesting to see how Dubois copes with that mentally. As I said, he's a very reserved, introvert character, so it's very difficult to get a gauge on him, so that may not affect him. It may affect him, who knows. These are some of the questions we're asking ahead of the fight. I'm still thinking it's going to be a very, very interesting fight, so I am looking forward to Saturday. I will be paying for it, and we have a lot of pay-per-view fights coming up. Joshua last week, if it was Dylan White, that would have been pay-per-view. We would have had 3 pay-per-view fights in the space of, 4 weeks? Because next week, the following week, next week actually, sorry. What am I thinking? Next week, September 2nd, is Liam Smith, Eubank Jr. 2. That's on pay-per-view with Sky, so it was mad. Each one of the major broadcasters in the UK would have had a pay-per-view on if Dylan White had been the opponent, for their next shows. Because you would have had, obviously, TNT, you would have had Sky, and you would have had DAZN. So, yeah. Would have been forking it. We're only losing one. We obviously didn't have to pay for Joshua's Hellenius, but still, loving the pay-per-views. So they are. And look, it is what it is. If a fight's good enough, I'll pay for it. And it's in my interest to pay for it, because if I do a watch-along, normally you recoup what you pay for it, and then something on top of that. So it benefits me. And if you pay for it, you're getting a quality stream, or you're getting it on TV rather than, get a stream that is, a bit dodgy and it's just chopping for it just doesn't work. But that's neither here nor there. In terms of some of the news that's been breaking, so today Sky Sports revealed that Anthony Joshua has actually read that the Saudis now want to revive the idea of staging Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk and Joshua versus Wilder on the same night. The goals to have Usyk Fury compete for Undisputed with Joshua and Wilder. It would be a great event. That's what Anthony Joshua says there. I really would love it if they did that. Simon Jordan was the guy I think who originally broke that, or started talking about that, and it did seem too good to be true. But saying that the Saudis' pockets are just phenomenally deep, and you can imagine if they had a card where Joshua Wilder was co-main along with Fury Usyk, the price of just seeing that would be astronomical, because it's essentially two pay-per-view fights on the one. The price of the pay-per-view would be astronomical, but you could say it was probably justified given the fact you've essentially got two pay-per-view fights on the one card. So, I'd love it if they did revive it. The issue has been, and it has been, Tyson Fury. That has been the issue with all this. With Deontay Wilder, he seems keen with Anthony Joshua. With Anthony Joshua versus Wilder, I'm fairly sure that fight will happen next. Alexander Usyk has tried to make undisputed, and Tyson Fury is gone. And he talked about Francis Ngannou back as far back as January this year. That was in the pipeline from then. It really is a case of, with him, it's just a case of how much are you willing to pay me? Are you willing to pay me astronomical amounts of money? Because apparently the Saudis, what he was looking for originally from the Saudis was even more than I think Alexander Usyk and other fighters were going to be paid combined. It was crazy the amount he was looking for. It's a simple case of pricing yourself out. Will he do that again post Ngannou? I don't know. I hope not, because all I want to see, I've said it once, I'll say it again, is Undisputed. That is the main goal for me, is to see Undisputed. I've seen Spence Crawford. That was one of the fights on my list that I wanted to see. I've done that. It's been made. And I want to see this made now. But at the end of the day, we need to get by this weekend. We need to see what happens. Never plan in the heavyweight division. That's why I will always say never plan ahead in the heavyweight division, because things tend to change. But I love that fight. I love all those fights. Joshua Wilder, Fury, Usyk. Joshua also went on to say that a fight with him against Wilder could be like Foreman versus Lyle. Very different styles there. He said, I'd say I'm a bit smarter than my approach to boxing is. IQ, intelligence. That was an all-out slug. It was a tremendous fight, Lyle versus Foreman. I'm saying I'm better than that, and I should be able to beat any opponent by using one hand. That I'm good. That's my mindset. Whoever's good enough to take me to the trenches, let's go. Okay. I hope Joshua does go ahead with the Deontay Wilder fight. Deontay Wilder, in an interview with Ellie Setback, excuse me, has stated that he's working on a 2-fight deal versus Anthony Joshua. One in Saudi Arabia, one in Africa, he added. That's the one that's up next. I'll be getting in a camp for this real soon. It's going to be great fight between me and him. Well, I'm hoping that we get that fight announced. I see Joshua, Michael Benson, I'm reading these off here, uploaded a picture of Joshua, Max Verstappen. So obviously Joshua is over in Zandvoort, because that's where the Grand Prix is this weekend. We like Max Verstappen on here. Big up Max Verstappen. We like him on here. We like Max Verstappen an awful lot. So yeah. Look, Joshua Wilder is and I might talk about it in a separate video, because I really hope, I want to see that fight next, right, in one sense. But then in another sense, I'm kind of like, well, Joshua does need more rehab. He does. But they've talked about it so much now that it's kind of like, in one sense, they kind of need to just do it. The Joshua versus Wilder fight. So let's see. The one thing I would say that Joshua has in his favour is he's been active, whereas Wilder hasn't. With Wilder, I said it once, I'll say it again, he needed an interim fight. Excuse me, I have a frog in my throat there. He needed an interim fight because he fought Robert Helenius last year. He did a better job than Joshua, yes. But, that's the only fight he's had. He's had one round since 2021. Going into a fight with Joshua, you want to be... Because, again, we're just assuming, right? Realistically, that's what we are doing. We're just assuming that Wilder is in a better mindset than Joshua, maybe better physically, but we don't really know, because we only seen him in there for a round. We really don't know the extent, and he was in there against someone he knew very well in Robert Helenius. We know he wasn't gun shy. That's one thing we can say about Wilder, but we don't really know a great deal else. The Joshua fight will tell us all that. Now I'm on International Boxing News here. It's saying that Tim Tszyu versus Brian Mendoza. That fight is going to happen in Australia, October 15th. Interesting. Looking forward to that one. Obviously, Tim Tszyu was great to watch anyway. But I was looking forward to him against Charlo. I was looking forward to him against Charlo. That fight will seemingly never happen now. Charlo going up 2 weight divisions. He's not coming back down So, looking forward to it. Looking forward to it. Obviously, Tim Tszyu, he is now, well, he will be WBO champion by the time that happens, because obviously he's technically interim champion still. But after Canelo versus Charlo, he will be elevated to full champion. And I've always said, for a first time champion, it's got to be a bit like, it's got to be nice to know, yeah, I'm world champion. But it's kind of got to be, how would I describe it? Unfulfilling. Maybe that's the best way I can say it, because for someone to win a champion become a champion for the first time, you want to have that memory of the night I became world champion. The night I went in there, I fought whoever, and I went and I beat him and I took his title home. Whereas, Tszyu is like, well, I fought this guy for the interim title, and then on September 30th, I got an email saying you're elevated to full champion. It's not the same. It's not the same. It takes away that moment, I feel. But look, I'm excited to see Tim Tszyu. I like Tim Tszyu, and definitely going to watch that fight. October 15th, though, when is that? I know obviously it's in October. Is it a weekend? Because Tim Tszyu fights in Australia, they typically have tended to be during the week. It's a Sunday. Okay, that's fine. Sunday in October, that's fine. Other fights that have been announced recently: Yordenis Ugas versus Mario Barros, which is going to be at welterweight for the WBC interim welterweight title. That's going to be on the undercard of Charlo versus Canelo, where will be mandated to face Terence Crawford. So the mandatories at welterweight are coming thick and fast. Obviously, he's an interim title. I mean, why the hell is Barros fighting for an interim? Has he even fought since he lost to Thurman? I don't know. But Yordenis Ugas, former WBA champion, held that title for a little while, lost to Errol Spence, and if he wins the interim title, he will more than likely be elevated if Terence Crawford moves up. And Yordenis Ugas, I think, will be a fighter that people target. I think he'll more than likely be a fighter that a few people will be targeting, because they'll probably see him as an easier touch, well, certainly than maybe a Boots Ennis if he picks up the IBF title, or whoever. So that's announced for the undercard. Now, this is an interesting one here. Not necessarily the fight, but it's rumored Joe Cordina will defend his title against Edward Vasquez on November the 4th. Obviously, that'll be on DAZN. But it's interesting to see where it's going to be. Not going to be in Cardiff. Not even going to be in the UK. Looks like Eddie Hearn is bringing back his Monte Carlo shows in Monaco. Now, if someone has started getting into boxing over, we'll say, the last 3 years, you wouldn't have been familiar with these. Starting in 2016, Eddie Hearn rented, I believe it was, what was the name of the casino? I can't remember the name of the casino, but it's one of the casinos in Monaco. I think it's on the circuit where the Grand Prix is. Obviously, that's a street circuit, but Casino Square is the name of the corner. Maybe that is the name of the casino, I'm not sure. But he basically done these shows in Monaco, and they normally were... He normally had more marquee fights on than, say, a normal card on Sky, or not quite a pay-per-view, but just kind of below it, if you get me. So he would have world title fights, he'd have big-ish names, maybe domestically on it. They'd be normally good shows. Now, for me personally, right, I never enjoyed them. Not the fights themselves, but the atmosphere in Monte Carlo on those shows was always awful, because it was not a big arena, it was a little-ish space. I can imagine the tickets were astronomical price, so he was probably making a profit, but it was just such a dead atmosphere. Like, I just didn't like the atmosphere there. It just was so dead. And he done one in 2016, done one in 17, he definitely done one in 18, and I'm not too sure about 2019 if he did or not, I can't remember, but he definitely done those 3 years, and I think in every year there was at least one controversial fight. And I mean really controversial. The first one was in 2016. Luis Ortiz fought Malik Scott. I think Martin Murray fought on the undercard. Someone else might have fought on as well. I can't remember. But I remember Jamie McDonald fought Laborio Solis, and he got absolutely battered in that fight. And they gave him the decision. One of them gave it to him by a wide margin. He didn't even have a close, which was insane. If you've never seen that fight, McDonald got battered. Literally got barred from pillar. Even Sky had him losing by a good bit as well. Like, it was mental. And then next year, 2017, I think it was 2017 or 2018, was one or the other. We had Cal Yafai, who was WBA flyweight champion, fight Israel Gonzalez, and he got absolutely robbed. Did poor Israel Gonzalez? It was shocking, that robbery as well. Wasn't quite as bad as the McDonald, but it was still bad. So we saw a lot of controversial decisions on those cards. And like, I always saw it as more of a gimmicky kind of thing. It was never really like, some of the fights were alright. Like, don't get me wrong, they were, but I just didn't like. There's just no atmosphere in there. That was really for me. It was just no atmosphere in those arenas. So that's going to be coming up in November. It'll be interesting to see what it looks like. But for me, I just didn't it the atmosphere. It was just so dead. It was just so bland and just, ugh. You know, it was one of them. Now, I see John Fury has issued an apology for his actions at the KSI Tommy Fury press conference. He says, "I sincerely apologise and I'll try and improve. But people, this is John Fury. This is who I am." I seen what he did. He kicked the table and like, John Fury, I've said it once, I'll say it again about John Fury. He is the sort of person where he has to go into a room and try and stamp his authority in that room. So everyone in it is like, avoid him, you know. It's just, but I've always seen John Fury as a guy whose bark is worse than his bite. His bark is worse than his bite. That is just John Fury in a nutshell. And I think at boxing events, he isn't the most grounded. I mean, obviously he's squared up to Wilder and people like that, and I think obviously deep down John Fury knows he hasn't got a penny of winning. But at misfit shows where a lot of them just, they're going to be like, "I'll stay away from him." That's what they're going to be like, literally at that. KSI, Tommy Fury, look, it's just, it is what it is. You know, for me, I won't be probably tuning into it more than likely. I was a bit up for Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury because it just seemed to have that intrigue about it. But I'm not really up for KSI versus Tommy Fury. Maybe I'll change my mind closer, but I'm not really up for it. And besides, that's not even going to go on either of their records because it's not actually a legit professional fight. So it's just it's just a payday for both guys. And look, that's really what Tommy Fury is about. He's really making a living from doing these YouTuber fights because you look at some of the opponents he's fought. Like, I can't remember the guy's name. On some journeyman he fought a couple of fights ago in the pro ring. Went 4 rounds with Tommy Fury, and Tommy Fury didn't have problems per se, but he definitely made work for the win. And that same guy fought Ben Whittaker in Ben Whittaker's last fight, and Whittaker didn't need to get out of first gear. It shows the gulf between a Ben Whittaker and a Tommy Fury. That like Fury is like having to try to beat this guy, and Ben Whittaker is just like, "Yep, done. See ya." Not even having to break a sweat. So I see Savannah Marshall has signed a multi-year deal with PFL, Professional Fighters League. So she's going to cross over into MMA, setting up a fight with Clarissa Shields, potential rematch there. So, one fight in the boxing ring, one fight in MMA, maybe a trilogy in a boxing ring, who knows? Let's see. That would be interesting. I mean, like, Savannah Marshall, does she have any MMA background? I don't know. In terms of female fighters, Savannah Marshall is probably my favourite female fighter, to be honest with you, because she's just a very relatable type of person. She is good at what she does, and she's just not full of you-know-what. So I like Savannah Marshall, I do, and, let's see how she gets on in the MMA world. I think the PFL will pay decent enough. I think Jake Paul has a stake in PFL, if I'm not mistaken, or he's something to do with them anyway. I seen this fight was announced. Gilberto Ramirez will face Joe Smith Jr. October the 7th. And that I'm hearing reports, going to be a cruiserweight. Will it be the full 200 pounds or will it be at a catch weight, say, of 190? Haven't heard that yet, but that is where we stand with that. So that's a good fight. I don't know who I'm going to take in that. Probably would make Zerto a slight favourite, but we need to see what they're like in the ring. Price for Usyk versus Dubois is going to be £19.95, the exact same price as Chris Eubank Jr. versus Liam Smith. So 40 quid over the next fortnight, lads. It's still cheaper than one pay-per-view in the States, so I don't know why we're complaining, but yeah, 40 quid, because a lot of people don't have 40 quid, unfortunately, nowadays. Everything has just gone through the roof, it is. And, I see the price of fuel is going up again here in Ireland. It's just a minor thing, and I see it's gone up by a couple of quid. Diesel and petrol are now very close. And for those because I remember some idiot, some absolute clown commented on a video I did ages ago And he was like, diesel's always more expensive than petrol. In England and the UK it is, but not in Ireland it's not. Brains. So that's where we stand with the cost of living and stuff like that. 40 quid over the next 2 weeks. Let's see, will Sky and BT or TNT do their pay-per-view numbers, get their good pay-per-view numbers, or will people watch it by other means, as Joe Boxing likes to say? And lastly, we'll leave it on this. Kiko Martinez announced his retirement from boxing at the age of 37. I don't have a hat, but if I did, I'd tip my hat off to you. What a career. Kiko Martinez has been there, seen it and done it, and just... I remember when he knocked out Bernard Dunn in a round. I think that was in 2009. That was in the Tree Arena. It was called the Point Depot at the time. I think it was the Tree Arena anyway, but it was called the Point Depot at the time. And I mean, Bernard Dunn was garbage. He was absolutely garbage. He won a WBA title, to be fair, but he was garbage. And I remember that was for an EBU title. And Bernard Dunn had all the hype of Ireland behind him when he got knocked out in a round by Kiko Martinez. And Martinez has shared the ring with a who's who. He's been in there with just about everybody. He's beaten some good fighters along the way. I think he's a 2 or 3 time world champion. I think he's actually a multiple time world champion at different weights. I think he won a world title at Super Bantam. And then he obviously won a featherweight against Kid Galahad in a fight in which everyone, I think when we saw the left hook, or was a right hook, I think it was, land against Kid Galahad, we all jumped up. And Kid Galahad's never been quite the same after. I mean, he lost his very next fight to Maxie Hughes. So I tip my hat off to Kiko Martinez, tremendous fighter. And, you know, he has a few losses. Some of those losses really shouldn't have been losses. I think he was very unlucky at times. And I think he wasn't a gatekeeper. I think that's very harsh to say he was a gatekeeper. He was better than that. He was a fighter where if you had any chinks in your armour, he would beat you. I mean, look what he did to Jordan Gill. You know, I never really rated Jordan Gill, but it amazed me how easy Kiko Martinez beat Jordan Gill. And if I'm not... Has Kiko Martinez fought... Was that his last fight? I'll just double check, because I got massive amount of respect for Kiko Martinez. I really do. Absolute warrior. Utmost respect. 12 losses. But there was never a loss where he wasn't getting... he lost his last fight. No, he did, unfortunately. He lost his last fight. I think that was in Japan. And what's BoxRec doing here? Is after just opening something else. In Japan, he lost his last fight to a guy, AB. Okay, I don't know how you pronounce that name, but it was in Japan in April of this year. Lost it quite widely, to be fair, on the scorecards, but that was what that was. Jordan Gill obviously lost to Warrett and Galahad, lost to Zelfa Barrett. That was a bit of a loss. The scorecards were insane. But, you know, as I said, utmost respect for Kiko Martinez. Tremendous ambassador for the sport of boxing. Arguably Spain's greatest ever performer, greatest ever boxer. Again, nothing but respect and admiration for Kiko Martinez. I hope he has a fantastic retirement, can live his life comfortably. I'm sure he can. And again, respect to you. I will leave it there, people. Hope you enjoyed the video. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. I can't guarantee a live before the live watch along, but we'll try and get some videos out in between then. For now, I'll leave you with that. Hope you enjoyed it, people. Smash the like button. Peace.